Dear learners, today we will discuss on the topic of characteristics of TV news. The learning outcome of this module is to introduce the learner to basic features of the television news. The module provides a comparison between TV news with the print medium and radio news. The module also discusses characteristics of TV news medium in details. It also deliberates upon the quality of TV news in contemporary times and its credibility. Let's begin with understanding TV news. Television news can be defined as a regularly scheduled program that delivers information about current events. It mixes images, infographics, text, and sound bites by reporters as well as other stakeholders in the story, such as government officials, CEOs, eyewitnesses, politicians, and voice-overs. The stories have high visual appeal. However, similar to print journalism, the reporting of the events remains objective, balanced, and fair. In a TV news bulletin, the important or lead stories are announced at the beginning of the bulletin. Each story is about the length of 3 to 5 minutes on television, and the most important elements of a news story is visuals, and the writing for TV news stories is done to explain and complement the visuals shown in the news story. Each news story is essentially a combination of visuals, text, and exciting sounds or music. Each news story is essentially a combination of visuals, text, and exciting sounds or music. Visuals are prominently used to explain the story. A single news bulletin is presented by a news anchor that links the stories presented by individual reporters. A TV news bulletin is about 20 to 23 minutes, which covers the most important stories at the beginning, whereas soft stories at the end. A bulletin may generally end with sports or weather news or both. Headlines at the beginning of the bulletin generally take over 40 seconds and give a glimpses of the news stories to be covered in the bulletin. A bulletin usually ends by showing trails of upcoming reports or programs that will follow. A TV news story is known as package in journalistic parlance. A package is a set of edited video clips that are narrated by the reporter. The video clips can have small interviews or sound bites, text information that could comprise chronology, key players, expenditure, background information, graphics, animation, ambient sound, other added sounds, and video effects. In most news stories, anchor reads a lead-in introduction before the package is aired and may conclude with additional information called a tag. Each package also comprises of an important element called piece to camera. There are three types of piece of camera of PTC. In opening PTC, the journalist introduces the story or explains the context of the new developments in the story. In this PTC, the journalist tries to explain the story or make complement the visual storyline. He may try to explain the gaps or complex parts of the story to the audiences. Whereas in the closing PTC, the journalist acknowledges himself, camera, other reporters involved in the reporting, location, and news channel. Let us discuss on characteristics of TV news, both TV news and print news. Journalists follow a similar process of news gathering where they research, collect information, write stories or scripts, edit them, and then present them in their respective mediums. However, the outcomes of their news stories vary as the medium on which they report differs starkly from each other. Thus, it becomes important to understand the main characteristics of television news. Let us discuss on audio-visual medium. Television news provides visual evidence of the events or developments such as live coverage of the swearing-in ceremony of the Prime Minister of a country, proceedings of the Parliament, press conference of a politician or government official, protests or strikes, a shortened version of speeches of prominent personalities, clips of various sports events, among others. Providing visuals to collaborate reporters' version of the story gives credibility to the story. It provides visual experiences to the viewer while sitting in his or her geographical location, and thus the viewer can feel the story. Many stories are covered live from the location and thus give a sense to the viewer that he or she is also present at the site of the news. It appeals to the sensory organs of the viewers much more than the written word. The viewer can understand the situation of the stakeholders of the story much more clearly. Thus, television news acts as a window to the world or their audiences. Audiovisual medium gives a feel to the audiences at the distance by engaging his or her different sense organs. However, it needs to be noted that different storytellers may be reporting different angles of the story being present at the same location or event. Audiovisual effect of the television news has a much more interesting effect on the audiences as they could view and judge the environment, tone, impact, consequences of the story. For example, the destruction after the earthquake and the conditions of the victims could be understood through visual than description by words.